Patreon people.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, Patreon family. We're here with our really longtime friend, Regis, and he plays bass for Mercy Jones, and we're just kicking it, having some good conversation about music and life. So thanks for joining us. The butterflies are swarming around the garden, and we've seen hummingbirds, and
I was really hoping that the butterfly would fly down onto my finger, right in face, and I could hold it up like that. Just in the off chance I held my hand up, but it didn't work out.
I'll just Photoshop one in.
E?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it. When did you first pick up guitar and start playing, or any instrument? What was it?
It sounds really stupid, because it sounds, but I just actually remember like writing songs through the bars of my playpen, like about like my favorite book, like the Choo Choo Train book, that had a song about the Choo Choo Train, and then like my mom would like do ironing, and I'd be looking up, and then she'd be watching The Price is Right, and then I had a little song called Come On Down.
I love it.
And it was just like, come on down, come on down, come on down.
The Price is Right.
And nobody realized this for a long time, but those were songs. Basically that. And
That's beautiful.
I kind of feel like I'm still trying to prove that they're songs.
So what was your first song that you wrote?
Yeah.
I mean, besides the kids and stuff. Later on, like
with a
real
guitar in
legitimate,
or piano in
guitar.
your hand.
legitimate song that you feel is legitimate.
Please don't worry about me. Please don't cry for me. Too many things on my mind. I can't remember it. I don't know. It's something like that.
How old
That's
are you?
cool.
Like 13.
There you go.
Good number.
Well, it's a good age to write.
Please don't shed the tears. At least don't let me see. Or I'll be here for years. And you know that's not the place I want to be. And I think that I didn't have any sort of sense of like measures, so I just had this little like. It was sort of like one of those country rock sort of things.
Yeah, it has a taste of Jackson Brown.
I was trying to do that kind of thing, but I didn't know really what measures were.
Oh, you know what's really good about it is there's a certain innocence to when you're like 13. You know, you just, yeah, you haven't really traveled the world, and you haven't, you're 13.
Yeah.
And yet there's an innocence and a beauty that, because it's pure emotion. That's a great song.
Yeah. Sounds really nice.
Yeah. So that's, you may want to revisit that, because that's a good song. Man. It's fun.
Pretty
It's
cool.
nice. Yeah.
Oh. There goes Burb.
Yeah, I think she's calling to us because we're so out here playing and talking.
I guess, it's like, that's what songs really are. They're like human bird calls, kind of. Like, Burb just, I don't know if Burb is a boy or a girl. But she just wants to be making the sounds too. Like,
Yeah.
I want to make the sounds too.
She was, you could tell it was like melodic what she was trying to do. It was singing. It was sweet.
I kind of feel like that kind of just shows that, whatever they want to say about instinct or whatever, I think birds actually really just enjoy making pretty sounds.
Yeah, you write really cool lyrics.
Oh yeah, I want to hear about your writing process.
Yeah. So when you come up with an idea for a song, what does that look like?
The Blob.
Well, yeah.
Kind of crawls up your arm just a little bit.
I gotta wonder about like, or so like this song "Taxi," right? Or this song, do 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 do. I had this for a while, and I was like thinking it's kind of crappy, and then somebody came by, and I was like, I'm doing this thing, dude. And it felt very like in my head and not very like inspirational.
Right.
But then playing it to the person, he was like, well, that strikes me as really great. So then I was like, okay, maybe there is something to it. And then but then I was like, there should be some sort of chorus. And then basically I just took the shower, and in the shower then the chorus was like this thing, like it was like this powerful phenomenon thing for me. And then I just felt like all that stuff, whatever, led to this thing, and then I felt good about the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, like
It's a great
It
song. It's
clicked
one of my
into
favorite
place.
songs of yours.
thanks, but that whole thing was like lightning the chorus
Well,
part.
but here's the
But
thing. Here's
before
the thing.
that, it was like I almost didn't even get there because I almost gave it up.
How do you approach? Is it just what pops in your mind, like as far as lyrics go? I mean, your music is great, but like the lyrics, I'm always, because behind every song there is a spark, an energy. So, is it just what's going on in your head, or
I think it's a mix, really. Like, 'cause I guess that was what I was saying. It's like, well, that was opposite of sometimes I'll have this thing, which I suppose you guys, and like a lot of other writers probably have this, where you're like, I've got this thing that I just think is really great,
And
but
I don't know, it's not
like
finished.
it's not finished. So it's not acceptable, and you just have to admit to
I
yourself.
have little ditties that aren't
It's
finished.
not acceptable to go like, okay, I'll finish the rest later. Nobody gives a shit. It's like it has to be a complete thing,
right?
because it just makes you look like it exposes. I think Hemingway goes, it's nobody's business you had to learn to write. Just let them think you were born that way. Like if you have a finished thing that isn't great, then you're exposing this total chink in your armor, I feel like. And it's like, that was one reason why I wasn't so into the Beatles anthologies. I kind of liked that everything that you heard from them, you were just like, how the fuck did they do that?
Yeah, how did they come up with so many great songs? Yeah.
Yeah, like, how did they get that sound? Then then it's like, got to get you into my life, and I hear like, okay, so Paul, they're probably playing to something. The drum is like chink 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 chink, and there's like an organ, and then Paul's like trying to sing, and this bit here is not quite done, and then they're like, obviously, they had a lot of fucking work to do to get to the end. The part that I heard when I was like 10 years old, which just totally like blew my mind. Like, they are not really these, maybe they are, but the whole thing is like the fact that they went through all that work is the incredible thing. Like,
Well, one of the things that I find, I mean, it's like, in dealing, I have a half-baked song, and I'll take it to Jenny, and I'll be like, I really don't like the words. I like the meaning of the song, and I'm lucky, I'm fortunate that I can just say, hey, I got this thing, and we'll work on it together. And I think, any great team, or any team, where you can say, hey, Regis, what do you think about this bass part, or and you'll take it and like make it better. I think that the thing about the Beatles that they jammed, and John would like say, well, that needs a bridge part, or this isn't quite right, or George would get on there and say, no, the guitar part has to go, here, and they had so many great, components, and
that had to have been achieved through constant feedback and polishing.
plus,
George Martin.
their producer had a degree in arrangement.
Well, and he
So maybe they
arranged
didn't.
classical music. I mean,
Yeah. So like, but this is the thing. It's like, Yes, it bugs me when people go, "Oh, well, Bach was a genius. John Lennon was not." Well, you know what? The thing is, like, they both basically did the same thing. They created melodies that people remember.
We're genius.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about genius, well, Bach was the proverbial hockey player whose parents put him in skates when he was 1 year old. Like,
Yep.
John had to learn it all by himself.
Yeah.
He didn't have any lessons. You know, he had to hear it and then figure out what it was to the best of his ability to facilitate his main skill, which was like writing catchy melodies.
Yeah.
Which is basically the same reason. I mean, Bach wrote "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," right?
No, it was Mozart.
Oh, sorry.
But Bach was a phenomenal musician.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a mathematician, and he figured out a way how to trick the brain and trick the heart and trick, and slightly change, which the Beatles did.
Yeah.
They'd have a melody and they would slightly change it so it didn't ever get boring. That's why you can hear Beatles songs 52 times in a row and still enjoy it. And then go back to another part. It's like, oh, I missed that part. When I was learning how to play, I would go back and I would groove out like Jeff Beck or the Beatles or whoever it was that were playing, because it was just that little part. And it's like, what is he playing? What are they doing? And it was just slightly different from the rest of the song. And I when I listen to your songs, you do that a lot also. There's like little nuances.
Elevation throughout the song.
Yeah.
So this is the thing in All My Lovin'. We're totally geeking out now. But, so what is that? Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. This is the chord I always wondered about, if George Martin had anything to do with it. All my loving, this one, I will send to you. I always thought, I bet you anything they came in with, all my loving, I will send to you.
Yeah.
And the producer was like, if you throw this in, and then George can do the harmony. And that's going to make you guys sound totally different from Buddy Holly, who, they totally worshipped. But this is a story I have in my head.
But the one thing, it may be true because he did that a lot.
Yeah.
But there was one story where Paul McCartney was talking about George, and he would hear about a guy that knew the B7 chord. So they would go across town on the bus and knock on his door and say, "Hey, we think you know the B7 chord. Is that true?" And the guy would go, "Yeah." He goes, "Come on in." And he'd show them the B7 chord, and they'd sit around and they'd play for a little while, and then they'd leave, go back on the bus, and now they knew the B7 chord, right?
Our band knows the B7 chord now.
Right. But that was like a true story. That
I'm sure that, because I get the feeling by the time 66 rolls around or something, they pretty much picked up on George Martin's tricks.
Oh yeah, well,
because they probably never stopped. But this is why I just love those guys.
Well, they were
just like,
they were masters at learning and finding little things, because it was exciting. I mean, they really wanted to know, the components of music, and that fascinates me that they would get on a bus as little kids to learn one chord.
But isn't that what you used to do before the internet, though? Learning one thing would be a whole day event.
What was your first band or bandmate?
Well, my guitar teacher, Don Pillsbury, when I was 15, was a huge, and also just like a father figure somewhat, just a really kind man who actually, I guess he also stood, this is a small town, of 5,000 people. He was witness at my friend Carl Dyer's son's baptism too. He just happened to be handy. So he's like, "Hey, Don." This dude was a total redneck, by the way. He had a degree from Cornell University in music. oddly.
Really?
And I would mow lawns, and then I would make money and then go over. It was like $15 an hour. You know, and he lived in a trailer, and he'd go over, and he would be wearing like an orange duck hunting hat, like and like I'd play him like, I'd bring him a record.
Oh, you don't want to get shot in your trailer.
Well, yeah, but he'd be out duck hunting after the lesson, and but then like I'd play him like those cool licks, like, and yeah, just I'd play anything for him, and then he would write it out in tab, and then I would read it off the tab.
Yeah.
But I have to listen because he wouldn't do it with one E and a two E. He would just write out what they were, and you'd have to hear it, you know. But he was definitely big, you know, and he taught
So was
me.
he into classical or jazz or blues or?
I don't know what the full thing that he really was into. He had a degree in music from Cornell,
That's cool.
but I don't know. We seemed to get along. Yeah, he was a cool guy. And he like a. Like he like showed me that, you know.
Woman ain't got no soul.
Yeah.
That's another. Besides the
yeah.
Beatles.
And what it goes like. It's like. Then there's this really weird turnaround that it's really complicated actually.
Well, yeah, because it's they go from different tempos.
Yeah. Like turns it around so then Bonham is like playing the snare on a different beat. Like suddenly it goes like when he's doing. Right. Like here it switches.
Yeah, it's great. Zeppelin. And Yes was like one of my favorite growing up. I loved Yes and I loved Zeppelin because they were like, you know, you had the rock side, you know, that had a lot of blues and jazz and a lot of stuff, and Yes was the classical side that I just thought was, I mean, Steve Howe and Wakeman and John, and Chris Squire was like the most amazing bass player, you know. So, were you into Zeppelin? I mean, you know, obviously you were into Zeppelin, but what was your, besides the Beatles, what was your big influence?
Well, Zepp and Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd, yeah.
Yeah, I know those are the staples of rock, but I gotta say, and I'm gonna use an expletive, so I fucking love rock and roll. I just love rock and roll. That is my home base, you know.
Yeah.
Peggy Sue, Peggy Sue, pretty, 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 pretty Peggy Sue. Oh, Peggy, my Peggy Sue. Well, I love you, girl, and I miss you, Peggy Sue. I love you, oh, Peggy Sue, with a love so rare and true. Oh, Peggy, my Peggy Sue. Okay, I won't do it. Well, I love you, girl, and I love you, Peggy Sue.
That's great.
I mean, there's really nothing better than that, is there?
Yeah.
It's just so like.
That's like me with harmonica. I like to ride out on one note and really milk it. That's what I think the original rock and roll.
I
was
think
more
so.
into that. Riding out one sentiment or one lyric or one note, one riff. You know, they ride it out.
I think so. Like it takes something from the blues, right? Like they're not too concerned with any high-minded. It's just like.
Feeling, emoting.
Well, I think, you know, and that's the funny thing is, you know, music evolves because people will go, wow, you know, that's great, what a great song, what a great, you know, but I'm going to make it my own, and I'm going to sing it my way. You just go, you know, thank God for these guys, you know.
Mm.
I do know.
I do. Smell it.
I guess I do have this feeling like I would like to keep that music, although it's somewhat loosely knit, this sort of feeling of like trying to have like full performances recorded, you know,
Yeah.
like even like if there are some what you might think of as like mistakes or inconsistencies, just the sound of somebody performing, you know, like you know, because it's exciting to hear a performance, I think.
Live, yeah.
Like,
Well, there's
yeah,
that.
maybe sometimes things are out of tune, but I mean, really, what is particularly in tune? Like, computers are more precise than human beings, so why are you using a computer to measure the accuracy of the human voice?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
like
you know,
it's been pleasing the
Well-
soul for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Like, do we need a computer to prove that we're not always singing in tune? You know, it's like, say what you will about Barry Manilow and his persona and everything, but he was a great songwriter, and I think he was a great performer, and I think what made him a great performer is I've never seen anybody so happy to just be on stage singing their songs. He's so fucking happy. It's like, I mean, that is soul, man.
That
I don't give a
translates
shit
to
what
the
he's singing
audience.
about.
Yeah, I have a story about that, which we'll share in another story time. But
Okay.
It's
I actually,
Ooh, I have to wait.
I was in a jail cell.
Good intro.
Yeah. No.
Do carry on.
you got my
No,
attention.
no, no.
I
That's
was
for
in a
another
jail
time.
cell.
That's for another time.
And
Well,
Another
I
cut.
time.
I got in a
Next
fight.
story.
Yeah, I got in a
With
fight.
Barry Manilow?
No, not with Barry Manilow, but it's a long story.
We'll save it for another time.
Yeah, we will.
Running over the same old ground. How we find the same old fears. Wish you were here.
That's great. There you go.
Nice.
Now you killed the bird.
The bird thinks that you want to make love to it. She's like trying to join in with our jam then.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear them play that.
Alright, sorry.